Hey, what's up everyone? So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about slavery. More specifically, how the arguments for human slavery are exactly the same as the arguments for animal slavery. Because a lot of people try and say, no, these are different and you can't make comparisons or analogies. But I'm going to actually use real historic events in this video to show just how similar these arguments are and how the same oppressive mindset has been used throughout history and still to this day, whether it's enslaving human groups or animals. Now, before I go into the exact arguments and what they were and are to this day, I actually want to show how the very idea of human oppression actually stems from animal oppression and animal slavery. That is, we learnt to oppress and enslave each other as a result of oppressing and enslaving non-human animals. I'm going to read you an excellent passage from this book, Eternal Treblinka by Charles Patterson, which shows the links between human and animal oppression. So this very interesting part of the book says, Carl Jacobi writes that it seems more than coincidental that the region that yields the first evidence of agriculture, the Middle East, is the same one that yields the first evidence of slavery. Indeed, in the ancient Near East, he writes, slavery was, quote-unquote, little more than the extension of domestication to humans. Most studies of human slavery have failed to emphasize how the enslavement of animals served as the model and inspiration for the enslavement of humans. But there have been notable exceptions. Elizabeth Fisher believes that the sexual subjugation of women, as practiced in all the known civilizations of the world, was modelled after the domestication of animals. The domestication of women followed the initiation of animal keeping, she writes, and it was then that men began to control women's reproductive capacity, enforcing chastity and sexual repression. Fisher maintains that it was the vertical hierarchical positioning of human master over animal slave that intensified human cruelty and laid the foundation for human slavery. The violation of animals expedited the violation of human beings. In taking them in and feeding them, humans first made friends with animals and then killed them. To do so, they had to kill some sensitivity in themselves. When they began manipulating the reproduction of animals, they were even more personally involved in practices which led to cruelty, guilt, and subsequent numbness. The keeping of animals would seem to have set a model for the enslavement of humans, in particular the large-scale exploitation of women captives for breeding and labour. Fisher believes that the violence involved in the subjugation and exploitation of animals that paved the way for men's sexual domination of women created the high level of oppressive control inherent in patriarchal societies. She also believes that men learned about their role in procreation from domesticated animals, and that the forced mating of animals planted in their minds the idea of raping women. Mary O'Brien also believes the enslavement of animals was the training ground for male violence. In Mesopotamia, warfare between rival city-states typically ended with the mass slaughter of male captives and the enslavement of women and children. Not only were female slaves useful as workers, but they were valuable because they could produce more slaves. Young girls stayed with their mothers in female work gangs, while boys were castrated like oxen and assigned to slave labour camps. The victorious city-states, which did not automatically kill all their male captives, castrated them instead and often blinded them as well, before they put them to work as slaves. Sumer, one of the earliest and most powerful of the ancient Mesopotamian city-states, managed its slaves the same way it managed its livestock. The Sumerians castrated the males and put them to work like domesticated animals, and they put the females in work and breeding camps. The Sumerian word for castrated slave boys, Amar Kud, is the same word the Sumerians used for young castrated donkeys, horses, and oxen. So now going on to the actual justifications used for enslaving humans, and how they are exactly the same as the ones people use now to enslave animals in the animal agriculture industry. I'm going to use this website ushistory.org. Now, bear in mind that this website is not affiliated with veganism or animal rights in any way whatsoever. So there isn't some kind of agenda here to push my message before you say that. This website simply gives examples of the arguments people used in the US to condone slavery. If you're a vegan watching this video, you'll be nodding your head at every one of these arguments because you will relate to being told these things yourselves by non-vegans as a justification for enslaving animals. If you're a non-vegan watching this video, I hope you will identify how these oppressive justifications are the same ones you may have used at some point, and believe us now when we say that you are supporting slavery in your actions. So here we go, let's read a few of these so you can see what I'm talking about. The page begins, "Those who defended slavery rose to the challenge set forth by the abolitionists. The defenders of slavery included economics, history, religion, legality, social good, and even humanitarianism to further their arguments." Interesting. Defenders of slavery argued that the sudden end to the slave economy would have had a profound and killing economic impact in the South, where reliance on slave labour was the foundation of their economy. The cotton economy would collapse. The tobacco crop would dry in the fields. Rice would cease being profitable. Sounds like a pretty shitty excuse for oppression, right? Well, guess what? This is exactly the logic you use if you're not vegan and say things like this. If the world went vegan, it would completely destroy our economy. All these industries would collapse. People would be put out of jobs. Okay, let's dig a little deeper. Defenders of slavery argued that if all the slaves were freed, there would be widespread unemployment and chaos. Sound familiar? Maybe sound a little something like, what would happen if we let all the animals roam free? It would be chaos. And of course, once again, the jobs thing. Continuing on, defenders of slavery argued that slavery had existed throughout history and was the natural state of mankind. Now where have I heard that logic before? Again, sound familiar? Maybe sound a little something like this. Humans have always eaten meat. It's natural. Two common fallacies there that non-vegans use. That is the appeal to nature fallacy and the appeal to tradition fallacy, i.e. justifying something because it's natural and because it's been going on for a long time. But wait, there's more. Defenders of slavery noted that in the Bible, Abraham had slaves. So this is just like when people say, look at the Bible, Jesus ate fish, and so on. It also goes to show just how much people cherry pick the verses they want in order to suit their own agenda. Here's another one. Defenders of slavery turned to the courts, who had ruled, with the Dred Scott decision, that all blacks, not just slaves, had no legal standing as persons in our courts. They were property, and the Constitution protected slaveholders' rights to their property. What does that sound like? Oh, that's right. It sounds exactly like when people say this. You can't give animals rights. Animals have no legal standing in court. They're property. You can't trespass on farmers' land and free their livestock. That's terrorism. It also just goes to show how naive and biased Carnists are when they use this argument. Because we say to them, well, this is exactly what they said about black people at the time of slavery. And they will always say, no, that's different. They're humans and they're equal. You can't compare. But again, at that time, they would have just said that, but about black and white people. They'd have just said, whites are all equal to each other. You can't compare them to blacks. There is so much arrogance in this logic because people are so naive to think that they are not utterly brainwashed from day one to see a certain group as below them. The worst speciesists now would absolutely have been the worst racists back then. No question. And finally, defenders of slavery argued that by comparison with the poor of Europe and the workers in the northern states, that slaves were better cared for. Ah, the old treated well excuse, eh? So this is exactly like the welfarist arguments vegans get thrown at them today, when we are trying to tackle things from a rights-based perspective. I.e. that there is no right way to do the wrong thing. If you're a vegan, you will have 100% heard something like this. Those videos you vegans show are from other countries. Here, our animals are well cared for. My uncle runs a farm, and he is kind to his animals. I'm hoping that people can now see the clear parallels between the oppressions, and intersectionals and non-vegans alike can stop complaining that these analogies are flawed or that we shouldn't use this term and instead consider why it's so important that we actually call it what it is, slavery. For a deeper insight into why it's important that we call it slavery, I'll link this recent Instagram post I did on the matter in the YouTube description, where I not only say it's important that we call it this and normalise it being called this in the mainstream, but why it's immoral to not wish to do so. Thanks for watching, everyone. Remember to like and share this video, hit the subscribe button, and if you want to support my activism so that I can make more videos, you can do so via my Patreon. Until next time.